Wire Reflections. In tonight's episode, we're going to talk about the prison industrial complex. And you should hear loud thunder and lightning, and a complete feeling of gloom should overtake you when I say that, because it is the destruction of humanity. Now, that sounds pretty ominous. I do understand that. I want to open tonight. And by the way, this will be a multi part series because it's way too big of a topic to conquer in a 40 or 60 or 80 or 90-minute podcast. Um, and I hope that what my objective is, is to not bring into the fold those of us that have spent long periods of time in the gated community sponsored by the United States of America, nor the families of those who have done that, but possibly touch upon some of the individuals that still run around in their lives today and say, no, the government can't do that. The government doesn't do that. The government does do that. And they are known for that. And they have perfected that because if you do a little dirt digging on the prison industrial complex, you'll recognize that it started when slavery in this country ended, when the African American population was granted slavery through the Emancipation Proclamation, on paper only, I might add. Then what was born was institutionalized incarceration because the state then was given permission, if you were committed a crime, to have you go to work as a prisoner for no pay, no rights, no union, nothing. You were basically a slave. And of course, that bred all kinds of corruption and inherent, uh, let's just call it the, the 18th, 19th century version of over sentencing, et cetera, et cetera. I want to read something to you. In 1964, a cat named Malcolm X, some of you know him, some of you don't. Some of you may think you know him. And those who don't know him or think you know him well, you should read every word that this man wrote because he not only died for what he believed in, but he went through some cataclysmic emotional and spiritual changes from who he was when he first became the national spokesman for the Nation of Islam under the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, um, to the point where he became a man of the world. And in his United Nations speech to nations of the world on the human rights crimes that he alleged were being perpetrated by the United States of America against people of color, um, he made himself into a bigger than life force for human rights. But he had become that prior to that speech. But early in his career, he said this. He said, when gangsters become political, the white power structure in this country will shiver in their boots. And that's a direct quote. My answer to that is this: when ex felons become political, the prison industrial complex will crumble at its core. And I believe that. And I want to explain what I mean by that. When we who have been incarcerated, federally speaking, are incarcerated and doing our sentence, serving our time, we don't have the ability to be political. I mean, uh, I have been put in the hole for 18 months, 22 months straight because I was thought to be inciting a disturbance and lobbying other inmates to protest and whatever, whatever, whatever. So then none of that's going to happen while you're inside. Period. End of story. However, when you are released and still being held by the toe by the Department of Justice, albeit supervised release slash probation, home confinement with the bracelet around your ankle, or whatever other program they've got you released on, be very clear. You can't vote. I'm not going to talk about Second Amendment rights and gun rights, but you can't own a gun anyway. And I don't really have a political position on that. But I do have a political position on being able to cast your ballot. And here's the reason why. Once you go behind the wall and you see, let me back up. Let me start from a earlier position. Once the whoever they may be, the DEA, the Treasury Department, the FBI, or all of the above, come and get you and they arrest you and you get indicted and you're sitting in a prison cell and they begin to strip your assets and you're trying to defend yourself and they're telling you that unless you testify against everybody you know, including your mother, you're going to do life in prison. When all of this is going on, you start to really see what lies at the heart and the root of the justice system, which is great evil, period. End of story. The tenacity and the ferocity that they will pursue you, and in the pursuit of you, do what they need to do to destroy not only your life, the lives of your family, the lives of your children, and the lives of anybody that's within a 100-mile radius of you at any given time is is like nothing you've ever seen in the world. And there's no other country that does it as efficiently as the U.S. Why is the U.S. have um, the largest amount of prisoners in the world? It's very simple because it's a business. It's a multi-billion-dollar business, and these people will kill and die to keep that multi-billion-dollar business going. In a later episode, I'm going to list the 12 corporations that profit from prisoners, and you've probably eaten at one of them in the month of July. You probably shop at one of them on a regular basis, and you're quite aware of several of the others. So the next time you're having a Big Mac, or the next time you're getting something delivered to you by Walmart, recognize that billions of dollars have gone into their coffers from prison labor, slave prison labor, where prisoners are making 12 cents an hour, maybe that, maybe less. Okay, having said that, let's get back to what can the newly released prisoner do, or the prisoner that is now maybe served all of their time, served their probation, and they're free of the Department of Justice, and they're free to do whatever they think they can do. I submit this to you, that if you are not politically involved, and I mean politically involved to the extent that you're either running for a local office, councilman, ward councilman, I don't know, town comptroller, maybe you have higher aspirations. Keep in mind, there are very few careers that ex felons are permitted to participate in, but running for office is not one of them. And the reason why they took away your vote, for those of us who are now thankfully out of prison, and for those of you who will soon to be out of prison and serving your supervised release slash probation, why you cannot vote, and all of this hoopla, oh, you're getting the vote back, bullshit. It's all a smokescreen. Yes, some states have given the right to vote. The federal government is simply not going to cave in on this because they know what you have seen. Think about this. If the average federal prisoner has a median sized family of 3.1 people, a wife, two children, maybe one child, not married, okay. Let's say you have two parents, one sibling, an aunt, and an uncle. And those they may know four or five people. Now that one federal inmate might have a nucleus, a circumference of say 10 people. Okay, 10 people. There's 200,000 federal inmates in this country. There's hundreds of thousands that are in the system that are on supervised release and or home confinement. And there's others that comprise a larger number that have been through the system already. They have seen the terror that is stacked upon the heads of those who go into the system. So once the family members see this, once the ex felon experiences this and lives through this, do you think these fat cats in Washington want you to be able to vote them out of office? I mean, let's be realistic. One of the primary reasons why term limits for senators and congressmen at the federal level, and judges, I might add, is something that may never change, at least in my lifetime, and I'm 61 years old, is because they know that that power and that money that they attain when they get elected, they're never going to get it anywhere else. More importantly, think about this. If the 30-something-year-old men and women who are qualified, educated enough, and have paid their dues legitimately through the channels that society has said you need to go through before you become a federally elected official, if they were in office right now, would there be any state in the country where marijuana wasn't legal? I just use that. I don't smoke marijuana. I'm not a fan of marijuana, but I'll defend someone's right to smoke marijuana or eat marijuana if that's what they want to do. The point I'm trying to make is this: these elderly, gray haired, extremely wrinkled 80 and 90-year olds, they know that if they have term limits on what they can do, they're not going to be able to sit in their ivory towers forever. Well, how does this fit into the prison industrial complex? I'm going to tell you. And again, if you're going to send me questions and answers or suggestions during this live chat, please understand, I don't care who's president of the United States. I never cared. When I was in prison, they would say, well, you're a Democrat, you're a Republican. I'd say, bullshit. I don't care if it's Donald Duck, Bugs Bunny, or Elmer Fudd that becomes president. Whoever's going to open the fucking gate and let me out, that's who I care about being the president of the United States, because those that I love and care for and those who need me and vice versa, I'm no good to them while I'm sitting in this prison cell. So our current sitting president, Joe Biden, some people call Joe Biden the devil. Some people call him Sleepy Joe. Well, in 1985, he was the young and vigorous senator from Delaware, and him and a cat named Ted Kennedy in 1985 devised the Omnibus Crime Control Act of 1985. Ronald Reagan was president. Ronald Reagan was probably already starting to get a little bit of dementia at that point in time. But in 1985, for those of you that weren't alive, those of you that were that don't remember, and those of you that might be listening and didn't care, but right now you do care because your husband, your wife, your cousin, your dad is in prison or you're in prison, listen very closely. In 1985, the insurance industry in this country, State Farm, Liberty Mutual, all these big boys, John Hancock, they were going out of business. Just like the auto industry had to be bailed out by Obama in '08 and '09 during the recession, the insurance industry in '85 was about to go belly up. Keep in mind, this is all pre-technology. This is all pre-social media. This is all pre the WW World Wide Web. Things were real old-fashioned then. So what did they do? Congress comes up with an emergency spending bill. They got to bail out the insurance industry. Joe Biden, the evil human being that he is, and Ted Kennedy, more evil that than Joe Biden, if you could fathom that. They determine that they want to change federal sentencing. They want to suspend parole where you did 1/3 of your sentence. You went in front of a parole board. If you really were doing the right thing, you could get paroled. At 2/3 of your sentence, you were getting kicked out unless it was a sex crime, arson, kidnapping, murder, or rape. You weren't getting out at 2/3 of your sentence, and you probably weren't going to get out at all because you got really hammered for those crimes prior to 1987. So they devised a bill which suspends parole and brings in the new sentencing scheme, which is doing 87.3% of your time, which is bringing in mandatory minimums, which is bringing in all of the ugly that has been destroying the minorities in this country's lives who have been caught in the crosshairs of the federal prison. It gets sent to Reagan. Well, Joe Biden thought that if you committed a federal crime, you shouldn't be able to be eligible for bond. That's a violation of the Constitution. Reagan vetoed the bill and it gets sent back. Now, what happens is they make a few changes and the insurance bailout wasn't enough. They realized the insurance company needed 2 or 3 times the several billion they were giving them because they were really the insurance industry, of course, is full of scoundrels and thieves, and they were hiding a lot of things that the government didn't know about. But once the government gave them money, they had to open up their books, and they come to find out this that the insurance industry needs many billions more. Therefore, they go to Uncle Sam and say, Uncle Sam, we've been a bad nephew. We need more money. Give us an emergency injection once again. Well, step up to the plate, Joe Biden, Ted Kennedy. Now they say, well, we're not going to pass the spending bill. We're going to extort the White House and make them sign our Omnibus Crime Control Act. Hence, parole is suspended. the 87.3% of your sentence is implemented. And most important, that people don't realize, it gave all of the power to charge and to sentence you. It took it from the bench and it gave it to the assistant U.S. attorneys, saying this: prior to that, you could be charged with a litany of crimes, and the judge could say, nah, we're just going to go ahead and get rid of that. I'm only going to sentence him on one count. Subsequent to this bill being passed and implemented on November 1st, 1987, judges had no choice but to sentence. And if you were indicted on 15 counts and pled to one, the judge would sentence you as if you pled guilty to 15 counts. It also tripled or quadrupled the amount of time you would get if you were to utilize your right to a jury of your peers. So, again, if you listened to us last week and I talked about my trial and what a farcical experience that was, and I'm not going to go ahead and start going back over all of those details again. Let's just say that going to trial is a very hazardous event in the annals of the federal criminal justice system. So now we have the groundwork for the prison industrial complex passed by Congress, ratified, excuse me, passed by the Senate, ratified by the House, and signed by the president. That means starting November 2nd, 1987. If you got sentenced to 10 years, before at 33 months, you could be up for parole. Now, you don't get parole. At 8.8 years and 7 months, you'll get released if you haven't lost any good time. Oh, and by the way, what they also did was they brought in an entirely new set of infractions that case managers were able to charge you with, and disciplinary hearing officers were able to utilize to take away your good time. Why? To make you stay in prison longer than 87.3%. And again, please don't take my word for it. Please don't listen to me. Do the research. And if you're too lazy to Google and you're too uninterested to talk to somebody that's been in prison, talk to somebody that's in prison and just ask them a couple basic questions. And what you'll find out is that if they have any knowledge of the history of the system that has incarcerated them, what you will discover is that this was all done for money. What people don't recognize is that by 1990, late 89, 1990, now Reagan's out of president, Daddy Bush is the president. He's busy, going into a sovereign country and scooping up Noriega, who, by the way, I cooked food for in federal prison. He was the only federal military prisoner in the whole system, and I don't know if I'm proud of it, but I was his cook for a couple of years when I was at one of the mediums I was at. Long story short, Daddy Bush is in office, and what's happening behind the scenes? Trillions of dollars are being raised because they're just waiting for the right time to start building these mega prison complexes, such as Coleman, 2 penitentiaries, a medium, a low, a camp. Massive amounts of jobs come into a godforsaken, barren, rural area. Louisiana, Pollock, Victorville, California, a slew of individual freestanding mediums and penitentiaries as well. Allenwood, Pennsylvania. These are multi hundreds of billions of dollars. I'm talking about 300-400 million dollars to build these complexes. Never mind staffing them with individuals that have to get pensions. So here we go. These prisons are being constructed. How do you get the prison workforce to pay for this? You do what's called no bid unicorn contracts. Individuals are stripped of all of their money, but we're going to give you a job going into a factory and sewing, and you can sew military uniforms. But what we're not going to tell you is that the companies that used to make these military uniforms that were able to bid like a normal bid, well, they can't do that no more. Now the government seals the bid and gives it to prison labor. Where did the government learn to do this? The government learned to do this post 1865 in the South when slavery was ended by presidential decree, and the state gave the power to the state prisons to go ahead and implement prison labor, slash slave labor to do the exact same things they were doing when they were enslaved. And you can guess that many of them, probably none of them, were white. They were all African American. So slavery was just slavery by a different name. So the prison industrial complex is born and now it's growing. But let's fast forward to when Slick Willie Bill Clinton gets into office, who was nothing compared to the viciousness of Hillary. Hillary was the force behind all of the closed doors that made all of the backroom deals that exploded the sentencing for crack, for cocaine, primarily crack, and then of course carried it through and they used the same techniques for meth. All of this to bring bodies into the system that were basically bankrupted financially, except save a few. I mean, even if you were doing really well and you had amassed 15 or 20 million of ill-gotten gains, that was nothing for the government to strip you from. I trust me, I know. I lived it. I mean, for them to seize 50, 80, 100 million, this is child's play. When you start getting up to get up to several $100 million into the billions, then you have the formidable means to fight the government, to be able to tackle some of the challenges that they're going to bring to you. So what we find is starting in 1992, and please, I'm giving you a multi-year overview of how this prison industrial complex has become such an enormous beast, such a massive thing to fight. In future episodes, that whole episodes, I assure you, won't be devoted to this topic, but we'll have small segments that I'll introduce to you that will give you a real bird's eye view and an insider's view after decades in the system of just how strong and almost impenetrable this prison industrial complex is. And at the beginning of my discussion with you this evening, I talked about how ex-felons really need to get politically involved. And I mean that. And I will lead from the front. Am I going to be running for mayor of my little hometown? Probably not. I'm not so sure they want a 300-pound, bald, tatted, cat in a suit wearing, wearing a suit as the political force. But I will open a political action committee, and I will support candidates that have been federally incarcerated, that have their heads screwed on straight, and they're not assholes and idiots, and that are looking to do some good social change for those that are the downtrodden and the least provided for, i.e., prisoners. It's time that we wake up. We have to wake up. And if we don't wake up, then somebody close to us is going to end up getting another 20 or 30 years. So if you're listening to this tonight and you are in prison, my heart goes out to you. But you go to sleep tonight, you know that there's somebody that's done decades in prison that's out here fucking fighting for you. And I'm not going to stop fighting. And I'm going to build with my bare hands if need be, and the help of some really devoted folks that are, putting this podcast together. We're going to build the largest prison reform network in the world. And we're going to do our best one day to be sitting in front of a judicial committee in Washington and be able to say, how dare you? How dare you take away the life and the ambition and the drive of an individual at 24 years old who's sure he had a juvenile record because he had no parents and got busted with a little bit of crack. And because of some bullshit guidelines, you want to give this person 20 or 30 years. How dare you? How dare you not seek to do what you taught other countries to do with their prison system, which is to rehabilitate them, find what they're good at, bring out the good, neutralize the bad, and put them back out into society as a productive member of society with a social security card, with a driver's license, with a place to go, with some hope, with some vision. How dare you? And if it doesn't start with who you're looking at in the mirror, it's never going to start. So you'll either be with me or not. I'll either be a sole voice like John the Baptist screaming in the wilderness, or maybe I'll be joined and drowned out by people that are far smarter than me, much younger than me, a whole lot better looking than me, and don't have as much ink to be covered up when they go in front of these politicians. But I don't really care about that because I'll probably go in a pair of sweatpants anyway. Point in fact is this: the prison industrial complex is not meant to do anything but enrich the fat cats, to enslave the minorities and to keep the machine fed. It's the beast. It's the color orange. It's the way of the aristocrats to continue. I mean, we're talking about a $4 to $5 billion a year industry. Everybody was screaming and yelling a couple years ago when they said, "Oh, Donald Trump is going to defund the private prisons," and he did. And he took credit for what basically Obama started. But listen, they're all a part of the same hypocrisy. They're all worried about getting reelected and their legacy. And, listen, Donald Trump hardened in his last year. I think of the maybe well, it was the least amount of pardons any sitting president ever signed, but the vast majority of them were already out of the halfway house, done with their probation. He just simply expunged their record so that they've never now they're not a felon. You see, they weren't pardoned from their sentence and released from prison. I mean, I'm no fan of Obama, and I'm not a fan of any politician. However, at least Obama had people that had life sentences stripped off their back, and they got free because they were yes railroaded. And I said it here, they were railroaded. And I'm going to tell you something else. If you become a regular listener to this podcast, and I pray that you do, I don't want your money. I don't need your money. I don't care about your money, but I care about your attention. I care about your commitment and your dedication to what we're trying to do. And what we're trying to do is not get famous. We're not trying to get, I never went for the fame. If you tuned into last week's podcast, I was asked to speak a little bit about my past and myself, and I'm not real good at it. I don't really enjoy it, but I did it because the point man that's really been instrumental in helping me with this, who's a godsend, an angel on earth, he wanted to know a little bit about it, so I did it. I probably will refrain unless I'm asked directly about it. However, fortune, fame was never the thing. I was always about the fortune. The fortune here, the pot of gold here, the winning, Powerball ticket here is to be able to make a little dent in the surface. There are four basic questions. What is the prison industrial complex? How do we fight it? Where did it come from? And will it ever end? Well, the term prison industrial complex was coined after Ike, who preceded John F. Kennedy, left office. He warned the country about the military industrial complex and warned that it was a beast that was growing out of proportion and that war would become the business of America. Figure it out. How many places have we been where brown people, yellow people, black people, non cooperating white people have been bombed, eviscerated, and blown to smithereens? I'm not saying that sometimes war is not in need. I mean, sometimes it's necessary. However, the military industrial complex is an entirely another topic that I have no qualification to speak of. The prison industrial complex, the combination, the ancestral relationship between business and incarceration has now become a $5 billion industry, processes anywhere between 200,000 and 3 million people per year because we've got over 3 million people incarcerated in this country if you combine all of the states and the federal government. Think about this. There's less than 200,000 federal inmates in the country today. The last statistic I checked, which was 2021, early 22, 36% of them were non citizens. That means that of the round numbers, 200,000 or so, almost half 80,000 human beings were from another country that committed a crime in this country. Why are they here? Why were they not deported? Why were they not sent back to their country? You people deal with it. Why? Because most of them are from third world countries, dirt poor, got no money. And what are they? Workers, worker bees. They'll do their little shuffle back to Unicor or to the kitchen or to facilities, and they'll work, 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 work. And the federal government, the prison system, being the whore of Babylon that it is, they make it really easy to send that money back to Guatemala, Nicaragua, uh, the Baltic states, Mexico, wherever, Italy, Canada, wherever these people are from. They make it very easy for these prisoners to work, get paid what in their country is a phenomenal amount of money. In this country is a slave wage, and support their family in style while they live in their own little cell that they, on weekends, they take a buffer and wax the concrete floor of their cell. Uh, and yet they were, you know, not interested in being clean and hygienic in the world. I'm not passing judgment on them. It's just the way the prison system grows on you. It grew on me in many a way. Uh, and maybe one day we'll get into all of the idiosyncrasies that I developed over nearly a quarter of a century in high security prisons. Going to the bathroom every day when you're going to the shower every day, when you have to tell two of your friends, okay, I'm taking a shower, and they got to stand by the shower, and you're doing the same for your friends because you never know what's going to happen or when it's going to happen, and they might get the wrong guy in the wrong shower when they're coming at somebody with swords. That kind of like it leaves a mark on you. So, prison industrial complex, the ancestral relationship between America's business and corporations and slave labor. So, who condones this? How did this come to be? Again, we go back to the 1860s when the Emancipation Proclamation freed the slaves, and and slave labor became prison labor. I'm sure you've all seen several movies in which you have the stereotypical prisoner with the striped uniform on and the ball and chain, and he's on the chain gang with a pick or an axe or a shovel, and he's going down, and in his merry way, he's being guarded by individuals with shotguns and bloodhounds and all of that. Well, listen, they may have turned the shotguns in and put the dogs in for the kennels, but you're still getting the individuals that are sadly compelled to go to work for this beast, make what they can and feel good about it and do it with a smile on their face. Why? Sure, they're supporting their family and they're being able to do that while they serve their prison time. But what would happen if there was such a lobbying effect on behalf of the ex felons of this world, of this country, excuse me, that would say, no, absolutely not. If an individual is found to be guilty of a federal crime in America, they need to be deported to where their country is because I don't want my tax dollars, my family's tax dollars, my friends' tax dollars supporting an illegal alien that did whatever he did in this country. Because I could tell you this, if I committed a felony in another country, I sure as hell would want to be deported back to America. I really, really would, because although the underlying dark black heart of the Department of Justice in this country is second to none, the living conditions in other federal and other countries in prisons are abysmal. I mean, if you really did some research on it, and I'm not, I can tell you that I've been in prison in Cuba, and I've been in prison in the Bahamas, not for long stretches, just for, in one case, a matter of hours, another case, maybe a day and a half. And I understand what it is to be in a cell where you can't see your hand because it's so black. You can't stretch your arms out because it's so narrow, and you can't stand up. And I'm only 5'10" because it's that enclosed. And you're sitting there and you're saying to yourself, "I'm gonna fucking die in this cell. This is insane." You know. So again, this is a big, big topic. But a part of it that I really need to put on your heart tonight, the part of this topic, the facet of this topic that I need you to leave this podcast with tonight is this. Unless the commitment and the dedication to change what's going on rises to the level of the individuals that are set, have their hearts and their political will set on keeping it in place, nothing will change. And we will go to our grave as ex felons, having done nothing for the individual behind us, having left it worse than we found it. And if you can live with yourself, then shut this off right now. Godspeed, good luck. May the sun be in your face and the wind at your back. But please don't tune into this podcast no more, because your courage of conviction is just not there. And I really don't want to, you don't deserve to hear what we're saying. On the other hand, if you just have a little bit of commitment and you can't do nothing but stuff envelopes, or you can't do nothing but make phone calls, or you can't do nothing but maybe run for political office, which is something gigantic and takes a lot of courage to do, we need you to open your mind, open your spirit. And if you have someone that you love or like or know that's in federal prison, whether it's for 12 months, 12 years, or 120 years. You need to be a part of what we're building here. We are going to build the largest political action network, the largest social political prison reform network this country has ever seen. We're going to do it one ex-felon at a time. We're going to do it one prison sentence at a time. And I assure you, and you hold my promise to the fire, we will have attorneys, doctors, politicians, activists, organizations, all of the respectable people in society are going to be a part of this because I'm going to be the one that's in their face and saying, "What are you doing? I don't know are you a Christian? Are you a Muslim? Are you a Jew? Are you a Buddhist? Are you a Hindu? Are you agnostic?" Well, in all of these holy books, it says you have to treat the incarcerated and the infirmed with the utmost respect. I'm not going to start quoting biblical tenets to you. And I'm not here to preach a faith or a particular following of a faith to you. But if you're listening and you have someone that's been in prison, if you are someone that has experienced federal prison time or state prison time, county prison time, or all of it, you need to wake up and you need to take a look at who you are today. You need to ask yourself, what have I done since I have been out to make the plight of those that I knew that are still in any better or ease the burden? Have I done anything? Or did I just get out and, go on my food bucket list and, as a man that spent time in prison, I'm just out there chasing tail. And I gotta get mine and I gotta do me. Well, you can do that for a while, but after a while, your life becomes so unfulfilled that you become an empty husk. Yet, when you start to serve the needs of the least fortunate among you, then you become a fulfilled individual. And I mean, come on. Sure, there are sick children dying of God knows incurable diseases. I don't know that I can do much about that. There are people that are living on the street eating out of garbage pails. I can give them a few bucks when I got it. But what about the person that has made a mistake and they have gone in front of a federal judge and they have entered a federal courtroom with the whole you know dogma of what the United States is and the full force of the Department of Justice now lined up against them, and they get a natural life sentence like that young man I was talking about last week that I was talking to after I got sentenced that just melted like the wicked witch of the east. I want to tell you about a guy I met him at Colorado, Florence, Colorado Penitentiary. And he was a young white kid, and you think if you know me, you think I got a lot of ink. He had his whole face covered, his entire body was covered. I mean, this kid was 120 pounds, and if you weighed the amount of tattoos he had, it probably weighed 125 pounds. That's how much ink he had. This kid never had a chance. His mother was a meth addict. His father, he never knew. His mother was putting him on the corner selling meth when he was 9 years old. And you've heard the story. He went from juvie home to juvie home to juvie home to warrior camp to gladiator camp. Boom, Texas State Prison. Does 13 years in Texas State Prison. He gets out. He doesn't know anybody, doesn't know anything. What does he do? He goes and sells meth. So he's doing 2 life sentences right now. He's been in prison his entire life since he's been of age. And whether those prisons were foster homes where he was being either manipulated, beaten, raped, or all of the above, or federal prison where he is now, and he's never going to leave the penitentiary. He's just never going to leave the penitentiary because every time they talk about leaving, he stabs somebody because he doesn't want to go to a lower security place because he doesn't know anything other than the stress, the tension, and the complete chaos that a penitentiary is. What about this guy? If someone was able to have some way to touch this kid somewhere in this juvenile, experience or somewhere prior to getting these life sentences. Am I saying that we're going to build an organization that's going to do that? I hope so. I don't know. I know this. I really love the movie The Field of Dreams, and if you build it, they will come. Well, you know what? If we put our best foot forward and we're looking to really do something to help change and break down and expose very serious term. If you know anything about me, you'll know this. I'm going to be in your face. I may be there soft spoken. I may be there very diplomatically. I may be even whispering to you, but I'm going to be in your fucking face. And I'm going to tell you, look, I'm not going anywhere. And if that means, what are you going to do to me? Put me back in prison for 20 years? Okay. So then that's what you do. I'll fight from inside. But of course, I don't want that. Am I willing to risk that? I'm not going to try to do that. But at some point in time, you have to be your own Malcolm X. You have to be willing to die some form of a death for what you believe in. He did it all. He refused to allow his people, in this case, African Americans in the 60s, to be continually imprisoned by the lack of human and civil rights that was being perpetrated against them by the American power structure and the American political structure. And I dare not compare myself to him. I can only be inspired by the words that he wrote and spoke. But I submit to you this, that near 30 years of my life was spent in the concrete and steel chambers of the federal prison system. And I really dealt with it from every level of security except for the ADX underground, locked in all the time. And I will tell you this, the personnel, except for the few exceptions, from the warden down to the rookie CO, they look at you as if you're nothing but the worst type of individual in the world. And they treat you as such. They may do it in a very discreet, low key way because some of them can be sued for discrimination, yada yada yada. But they drank the Kool-Aid, and they are part of this prison industrial complex. If you followed the federal prison system over the last couple of years, you would be cognizant of the amount of sexual abuse towards female inmates, the amount of prisoners that have died from COVID because they were thrown in the hole, left to die, the absolute negligence where wardens were going to prison and captains and lieutenants were being. I mean, I left United States Penitentiary Atlanta where they cleaned out the whole prison because someone threw a gun over the wall, and they come to find out there were thousands of cell phones, and there were female guards that were prostituting themselves. And I could go on and on. I'm not here to tell those kind of stories. Maybe one day we'll have some fun, and I will. But this is a turning point in your life. If you're listening to this, or you're going to listen to this at some point in time, then this is a turning point in your life. If you have been in federal prison, I speak to you directly. If you have not been in federal prison or state prison, but you know somebody that has, a loved one, a friend, a relative, a distant friend, whomever it may be, you listen, and you listen well. If you wake up tomorrow and don't make a decision to do something, shame on you. Then you are allowing the government to step on the neck of a human being. Might not be a human being that you know and or love, but it's a human being that has every right to have a fair shake at his pursuit of happiness. Yes, they committed crime. Yes, look, I was one of the best white collar guys out there. Committed a whole shitload of crimes. Everything the government said I did, and probably did more. They just didn't have enough paper left. I don't know. But I will tell you this, if I can change because of the teardrops that fell from my soul in the quiet and dark clanging night of a prison cell, then any man or woman can change. If I could find redemption and the desire to sit in front of what I'm doing right now and say my life will not be complete unless I dedicated every fiber and molecule of my being to those that I left behind in prison and make the system better in some way, less onerous and less dark and evil in some way. What good is my life? If I won Powerball and I got $910 million, I would still be doing the same thing. I might be not wearing the same clothes. I might be driving a different car, or a car to begin with. But I'll tell you this, if you're listening to this tonight and you don't make a decision to get involved in some way, shape, or form, then go about your life. But God forbid, and woe be it to you, if this Department of Justice should strike someone you love, or could fall upon you again if you have been in the system because you're out there running amok and playing the fool again. You know, one of the things that is akin to individuals that have served long periods of time is the desire to become a simplified human being. For example, I used to take a whole lot of pride in my coffee mugs. I mean, I was known for my collection of coffee mugs, and I used to have them made, and this is in the world. Now, well, I don't really drink too much coffee these days. Usually, I just eat it and chase it with water. I've been doing that since I was a kid, but now I drink coffee out of my prison mug because and you know what I was trying to do today? I was trying to go online to find Keefy coffee because I can't drink none of this other shit that's out here. I can't drink it. I just can't do it. I'm trying to find where I can get Keefy coffee, and I'll drink that for the rest of my life. And guess what? I don't care. Here's what I care about: that when I went to when I went to trial, I should have never had to go to trial. I should have been given a 5-year plea. I'm not upset with the government because it took every ounce of one of the best assistant U.S. attorneys this government has ever seen to get me because I was really committed to not getting got. So for my walk in life, I know that it was God's Holy Spirit that stepped in and put this very, very talented, determined, tenacious pit bull of a prosecutor in my way. And that person stopped me and gave me nearly 30 years in prison. And I served it all. Many post conviction motions, many wasted thousands of dollars, all denied, but I gave it my best shot. And I came out of prison a different man. I went in some ways, a very full of myself young man, older boy. And I came out awoke. So tonight, 46 minutes into this conversation that we're having, I plead with you to wake up. Wake up whatever is in you that cares for another human being. That doesn't mean you need to go and give somebody who has an I will work for food sign $5. You don't need to give the ASPCA $10. You're listening to this because you are talking about incarceration in America. You're tuned in tonight because you are either in prison, were in prison, or doing something that might take you back to prison, or you know and love somebody that is currently in prison or has been in prison. So we're talking about deconstructing a system that has destroyed millions and millions of lives. And I beg you, wake the fuck up, please. The system is silent and deadly. It is insidious and pervasive. It grows by the day, by the human being. Tomorrow, between 8:30 and 5 o'clock, hundreds of men and women in this country will be sentenced to decades in prison, and they will be thrown into a culture and a world where society forgets them, and the only people that remembers them is their direct and immediate family. Sooner than later, friends will fall by the wayside. Business associates will go on, and they will come out into a world like I did. Oh my God, where am I? I left the world. There was no texting. There was no social media. There was no World Wide Web. There was no technology. We still had three major networks. Cable was a up and coming thing, and we still had house phones. Cell phones were like, okay. I had a beeper when I left for prison. I came out into a world where if the two individuals that are instrumental in helping me with this did not walk me through the technology to be able to talk to you tonight, I would not be able to talk to you tonight. And I am grateful for the both of you. You are both my angels on earth. And I will continue to tax your talent because I don't want to be technologically adept. I'd rather be a technological midget and yet a giant fighting for the freedom and liberty of individuals that are unfairly sentenced in this country by the prison industrial complex. It's not going away. And the only way that it's going to go away is if we get in its way. Remember this: Malcolm X said, by any means necessary. Now, I'm not going to take up arms against the federal government, not my style. I'd rather, I'd rather be with a beautiful woman out at dinner, not a fighter in that context. But I will carry a sign. I will make 100 phone calls a day. I will go to Washington. I will do what needs to be done. And here's what's beautiful about all of this technology that I abhor. We live in a world where one day there could be 1 million people listening to the words that I'm saying right now, not because I'm this tremendous podcast talent, hardly, but because they're interested and I can reach them. I don't have to get on the telephone or write 50,000 letters. I could push a button and I could reach somebody who could reach somebody who could reach somebody that can make a difference. And that's why you always have to remember there are angels upon us, there are angels among us, and you never know when you bump into one of them. So be very careful what you tell people you care about. I submit to you here tonight as I close out this hour of conversation, and I'm very grateful. If you've hung with me this long, I'm really grateful. I submit to you tonight, here and now, if you are an ex felon, you need to pick yourself up by the bra strap or by the bootstrap, and you need to get involved. And that doesn't mean anything other than, that doesn't mean trying to get your vote back. Screw that. Votes don't mean shit. You got to be the person they're voting for. You got to be in the office of the one that's getting promoted to become that councilman or that mayor or that city comptroller or that a lieutenant governor or whoever it may be. That means you got to do a little due diligence. You got to do a little work. And if you're not willing to do the work, do what everybody else does. Google it. Can I run for state senate with an ex-felon for narcotics distribution? Can I be the mayor of of anywhere USA with a felony for money laundering? And then Google will give you the answer. It's not hard to be involved today. I'm not asking for your money. I'm asking for your effort. I'm not asking for your time. I'm asking for your talent. And I'm not asking for you for anything other than what you would have wanted to ask somebody while you were in your cell saying, why me, poor me, oh me, if you were that kind of person. Or if you were saying, fuck the government, fuck this, fuck that. I was neither one of those guys. I was just, wow, wow, the power, the power. I might have mentioned this in a previous podcast. I was out of prison. I'm walking the track. I just come out of, I got to the prison. They put me in the hole under a captain's review. You're an Italian guy. Do you have any problem with these Italian people? No, I'm good. I'm good. Everybody's good. We're all happy. A couple of days later, they let me out. I got a pair of Bobos on, a pair of bus pants. I'm with an older Italian guy that I know my whole life. We're walking the track. Out of nowhere comes a C-130. The biggest thing I've ever seen and I said to him, Louis, what is that? He goes, oh, that's a C-130 transport plane. We've got them all over the country. When I was in the Korean War, we had, I said, what? Are you kidding me? And I said to myself, if we can build that, get it in the air, put them all over the world, how the fuck could you ever win a post-conviction motion against this government? You can't. And he said something that was incredible. He goes, and here we are. That's why we're exactly where we are. So my point is this. If we put enough legitimate, bona fide effort into deconstructing the prison industrial complex, the government will blink. They will always blink. They must blink. They're born to blink. They have to blink. They're the government. But they make it so difficult. Let me give you an analogy. You get in prison, you do something that you get a shot, a disciplinary report, but you didn't do it and you believe you're innocent. Well, you have what's called the grievance process. It's a 4-step process. You file a grievance at the entry level, the second level, the third level, and the fourth level. 8, 9, 10, and 11. And 8 goes to your counselor. He does nothing. Bullshit. 9 goes to the warden. 10 goes to the region of the area of the country you're in. The 11 goes to DC. They make the process so arduous and they stretch it out so viciously. They take postponement, and they make it so impossible that 9.9 out of 10 of the individuals that begin the grievance process quit. They just stop. That's what the government counts on. They count on you quitting. And I implore you, you don't have to worry about quitting because I and the team that I'm assembling, we won't quit, but we're still going to need your effort. We're going to need your input. We're going to need you to be involved. How? I don't know. When? I can't say. And why? Because it matters. Because why? Because you have a dear loved one in federal prison. Why? Because you served 15 years or 15 months of your life. Right? You may very well have been as guilty as I was for doing what they said you did. But I submit to you here and now, the system is ripe to be broken, but it needs to be exposed. And it doesn't need to be exposed by the ACLUs of the world and the left institutes of the world and the activists of the world. It needs to be exposed by those of us that were in chains and shackles. The need to wake up to the premeditation and pervasive destructiveness of this system with an eye on post incarceration is imperative that we, the individuals who wore the shackles, are the ones that expose the shackles. Because the person that has never been shackled and cuffed and black boxed and gassed and hog tied and all of the wonderful things that happen when you do things to tell the system, hey, I'm not doing that. You're not going to treat me this way while you're in the system. People that have not experienced it, they're never going to know the levels of degradation that you go through when you're sitting in a hole year after year. And sometimes you forget what month it is. And it's so cold, you're freezing. And you got no calories in you, and you're stone cold hungry. And you don't know what's going on because you don't get no phone calls, you can't write no letters, and you don't get your mail. You got no visits, and nobody comes to your door. And you want it that way because you're going to hold your water and be a man or a woman, and you're going to just stay the course. But I submit to you here and now, there are people right now tonight that need your attention. They need your effort. And I pray that I really hope that if I didn't inspire you, because I really didn't try to inspire you, I just tried to give you some facts. I at least made you feel bad because you haven't done shit. And if you've been down the federal walk and you've done the perp walk, and you've been in the holding cells and been on the buses and on Con Air, and you've been shipped from prison to prison and all of these other wonderful things that nobody ever knows except for your family, it's time to rise. It's time to stand up. We're going to do it legally. We're going to do it morally. We're going to do it ethically, but we're going to do it. And again, if it's not for you, you're definitely going to lose interest in this podcast because this is what it's going to be about. It is not going to be ice cream, peaches, and chocolate cake. It's going to be in your face activism for the individuals that are being stepped on right now. Make this system work the way it was designed to work to produce productive people when they exit the federal prison system, not individuals that don't have a driver's license, don't have a social security card, don't have any training, don't have any money, don't have a car, don't have a home, don't have any hope. There's no light in their eye. We have to be those working on the outside to put the light in their eye, the fire in their belly, and you have to make a decision that you're with it or you're not. And if you're not, it's cool. You know what? Don't let the door hit you in the ass. But remember one thing, some point, sometime, you're going to bump back into my voice, and I'm going to remind you, you closed the door on somebody that needed you at their darkest chapter. It's okay. You got to face your own God. You got to face your own demons. You'll have to come up with a better excuse than you're giving me. So, having said that, I can't thank you enough for tolerating me for these 59 minutes. We'll be back next week, same bat time, same bat channel. And I assure you of one thing, we're not going away. God bless. Say again. Okay, so what do I do now? Did Joanne listen to the whole thing? No. Yeah, I get well because I'm not in a video mode. I can see you though. I don't know what I said. Well, good is good. Yeah, I mean, I'm hoping it was good. I mean, I don't have any notes. I'm kind of just kind of going with it, but I'm, Yeah. Well, I guess I get it. I understand. Uh, yeah, I never experienced that. Yeah. Hold that thought. Mike, are you there? Okay, what do we gotta do? Yeah, all right. No, another one didn't come up. Your stream will stop immediately and you will no longer be live, not yet end. Okay.